Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 19th episode of the Hipfire Podcast. Today, we'll be breaking down our picks for the top EU amateur COD players to look out for in this coming Cold War season. Now, before we get started, there are a couple things Seth and I want to touch on just to get it out of the way that have been going on in the scene that went on with our last video. Just to address, obviously, we released last week our top picks for NA, and we received a lot of positive and constructive criticism as well, which we're really happy about. The feedback that we received from guys like Spoof and Sib about the players that we should look out for and the research we should be doing in order to make these videos, more informative is very important for us because we do want to get better. At the same time, understand that we only have so much video of the AM scene, given that not all of it was streamed. We only have so much time to watch each game, so we're doing our best. I promise we're going to continue to improve. Just keep that in mind. Like even in today's video, we're trying to name the EU players that we can, but not all the stream matches were streamed. So this is just the players that we think will stand out. If there are players that we missed or things that we said were wrong, please point that out to us because we do want to get better. But with that being said, there are other news that happened in the scene, and Seth, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, one of the biggest news was Farah passing away, which is very sad, and uh, always praying for his friends and family. And I just wanted to quickly talk about Pharaoh for a bit because he was a very unique player. I think that we haven't really seen before, where we don't see all the time players hitting the highs of second at champs to then being benched to then being back in and winning tournaments again. That arc is quite crazy for him, and it was really great to see his resilience and his perseverance to get back in the league, get back into a top team again. And just wanted to share a little story. So my roommate, who wasn't a big COD fan at the beginning of World War II, I kind of got him into it, and from the get go, he loved TK, he loved Kenny, he was all about TK. And when Pharaoh joined, he was so excited. He was like, "Oh, he's gonna be great. This could be perfect." I had my reservations because, I was introduced to Pharaoh in the Parasite streams in the beginning of World War II when there were like a lot of bickering and a lot of in-team fighting and everything. And I wasn't really sure how Pharaoh would mesh with TK. And they were such a fun team to watch. Ended up being great, obviously, with second champs. And yeah, it's just a sad story, sad passing. But just also wanted to remind everyone that's listening to reach out to hotlines if you need to, and try to get help if you're battling depression. And also, if you know your friend is as well, check in on them. It's we're all in this together. We're all experiencing lockdown together, and for people who do have issues and are struggling mentally, now is the any time just as like I don't want to say more important as any, but it's an important time to check on your friends and loved ones. But with that being said, we had some other happy news with the LA Thieves joining and Optic rebranding to Chicago and Hex and Scump and all that kind of good stuff. So we're going to get an LA Thieves and Chicago Optic match, which is super weird to say out loud, but it's going to be exciting. I wish it was on LAN, obviously, but unfortunately, it probably will not be, at least the beginning of the year. So with that kind of all that kind of stuff out of the way, let's jump into the list. So first up, we've got Afro on the list, and so I mean when we talked about AIM players the whole year, Hydra was the first on the list, basically the start. Obviously, he got signed on to New York, and I expect him to start on New York, excluding any visa issues. He should be the starter. So he's not on the list right now because he's already up. He already made it. But the second guy we always had after Hydra is Afro. So Afro, I first noticed when it was a tournament before he got picked up by Team War. He was already frying, and then once he joined Team War and he made them better, I kind of realized his potential and how good he could be. Because the first tournament I saw him play for Team War, he was instantly slid in as the what would he call route man? Like he was automatically the route man, and already played so smart and made the best team better in terms of like how smart they were in their gameplay, which I think is pretty crazy to do. I don't think it's very common for a rookie to come into a team and make them better, not just from a skill standpoint, but also from an understanding of the game standpoint. So that's the first thing I noticed with Afro. I remember I tweeted out, I don't know, this is on Reddit or something, after the first series about how route man should get paid, and people took note of that. So good on Afro for that. And we have a clip of Afro actually from his Twitter. Let me show that off now.
Less than a minute.
Damn.
They're hurting. Let's.
Jesus, I actually hadn't seen the whole clip yet. Wow, that was nasty clip from Afro there in S&D. And that's also what took note for me for Afro was across all 3 game modes. The same thing we saw with Awakening. It's the same thing I saw with Hydra. Is like if you could be a consistent player, rookie, come in and dominate in all 3 game modes, it's pretty special. I know Yas, you watched a bit of the Challengers finals. So what did you think of Afro when you watched him play? Yas,
Yeah, so I sorry, my bad.
You good?
Yeah, so I went back to watch the EU Challengers finals just to get a better sense of the players that we're going to talk about in today's video. And Afro was definitely one that stood out both in terms of play, and the casters also noted his play. I mean, he was incredibly talented. Just looking at the stats he was able to put up in the first series, at a 1.29, the highest of any player in the lobby, including the main AR Dave. And then in the next match, he had a 1.21, which was third, only behind the other 2 main ARs, which are Insight and Dave. And he had a 1.25 across both series. He was talented with both weapons. You saw him frying with both the M4 and MP5. Incredibly versatile player. He had a lot of high engagement maps too, so he definitely wasn't a guy that was also like that was baiting his teammates. That was never the case. He was constantly putting on pressure alongside guys like Denza and Vortex on this roster. So he's definitely a guy that is like broken out. And one thing that I wanted to actually talk about, for those of you who don't know, there's this analyst named Potsy. You see, he creates these posts on Reddit from time to time of players to look out for in the M scene, and he did a bit of a breakdown on Afro as a first-year variant player who have climbed their way to the top. So I'm going to read a bit of excerpt that he has talked about Afro, just to give a better sense for those that don't know what he's like, what Potsy is analyst of Afro is. So he says, since joining Team War, Afro has won all the 4 online tournaments that he has competed in. Unlike many of the other rookies who are well known in their circle before the season, Afro seems to have come out of nowhere and is now putting on MVP performances in the Challengers Cup events. Afro is a master of the movement mechanics, and along with the pace of his gameplay, he could be confused for a British Abizi. Afro isn't afraid to take long routes and will make sneaky plays to secure rotations. He has the versatility to play the flex role and bring out an AR depending on the map. With an AR in his hand, Afro plays a role more similar to the run and gun style of Awakening. Afro seems to have adapted quickly to the variant landscape, but his elusiveness will always allow him to thrive in S&D specifically. And then he talks about being skeptics, considering that he is top 8 CDC events, but is on LAN. His current top placement is top 64. But we'll leave Potsy's links in the description below because he's definitely a guy you should follow for more information on the EM scene. But it just gives you an idea of that this is a guy that has really made a name for himself in the EU scene very quickly at a young age, and that's why he's atop our list.
Yeah, so that wraps it up for Afro. Obviously, great breakdown. We'll leave his links down below for sure. And yeah, one more quick thing on Afro is it's important to note when we talk about next up, we also meet guys that we expect to make the Pro League one day. And being a flex player is so helpful for making the Pro League because you can slide into any roster and improve it. When you have main AR, sometimes it's tough. And when you have entry, sometimes it's tough. When you're a flex, though, and you can just do whatever your team wants you to do, very helpful. It's kind of like a Priesta thing where you can put Priesta on any team and makes them better, right? So it's a great quality for Afro to have. So after Afro, we have the Tane. Tane is nasty. Very fast submachine gun player. And he just tons of engagements. He's also very good with his movement. I don't know if that's like a EU thing, but I have noticed these EU guys with their movements pretty nice. And I have a clip of him and his movement to show off here. So the clip is him getting some kills, and he snaps on to kill at the very end, which is kind of nasty. But just pay attention to his movement, because the caster calls it out as well. I'm pretty sure it's I hold shift. He also catches how good his movement is here.
Play a Singularity. They do seem to clear up Team War for a second out of B flag and try to get that neutral as soon as possible. You see Dave trying to get there as fast as he can, but there's two players of Singularity just waiting for him. Team War, though, looks like number 7 on your minimap. That's going to be Steve. He's going to try and go for A. Does get picked off, though, so good answer by Singularity. I mean, they just got 3 players of Team War down. They're going to try and keep this lead here. 2 more minutes. If Singularity manages to hold this for the rest of the minutes, it could be a huge lead going into the second half.
Ooh. This movement from Detain right now, he is bobbing and weaving beautifully and finding kills. And oh my goodness.
Yeah, that snap on the guy in the window was pretty nasty. But yeah, he takes like every engagement one-on-one and then ducks behind something, slides behind the window, gets into cover. It's a pretty nice movement from Detain there. And then I have another clip of him. Just this is like, that was his movement, and this clip is his aim. Like, this is an insane clip.
You have the man advanced, but a big one at that. 4 versus 2, 4 versus 1. Detain!
Oh my god.
They have families, man! Jumps out the window, finds one, soars off the roof to find the second. Beautiful stuff from him. And Singularity.
Yeah, nice little snap there, flying out the window like a madman. So yes, what did you notice out of Detain in the grand finals?
Yeah, I was a massive fan of Detain in the grand finals. Obviously, he played for Team Singularity for the majority of the year, or I think all of it actually. And although they ended up falling in the grand finals, he was a player that definitely stood out to me as a guy that every team should be looking out for. Just as an aggressive sub that, he applied so much pressure on the other top teams. It seemed like, I know in the last podcast you talked about something called peace potential as players that are capable of getting multiple kills in a row. I felt like, and maybe this is a result of 5v5 and we won't see that as often, but it felt like every single time they switched on Detain, he's getting 2-piece after 2-piece after 2-piece. It was almost unreal how easy it was for him to put on pressure on the other team. He made nice plays on rotation. There's one play I remember on Hacking Yard. He rotated to P5. He was the only one. He got a 3-piece and helped Singularity keep rotation there when I believe they were playing. I believe it was Team BDS. So you could tell that he's definitely a player that teams should look out for. He's always got high engagements. He reminds me a little bit of Dylan in that sense, of a player that's like, it almost seems like he is constantly pushing down on the L3 button because he's always moving on the map, and he's always high engagements, sort of like Dylan is for the Royal Ravens. So that's my sort of comparison. Looking at his stats, I mean, he had a .95 in the first series, which considering that only one player went positive, who was the main AR, that's pretty good. I felt like he had a really solid first series. The other players didn't. And then in the second series, he definitely didn't. He had a bit of a rougher series. I think he had a .63. He had a rougher go around the second time. But overall, I think, give him more time to develop. And he's going to be a player like the team like a Seattle or a team that is struggling at SMG should look out for. He's a guy that I really think is going to be an incredible player in the league for sure. He's someone I really want to keep my eye on going forward. And we even know already his next team in the Challengers is going to be alongside Denza, Maple, and Bids, players also on this list. So definitely got to be a guy you got to look out for.
Yeah, and to compliment Bids, I mean, my bad. To compliment Detain, Singularity also had Bids. So Bids is next up. It's pretty close between those two guys for me. But I think Yas watched Detain play, and he's like, this guy's nasty. So I was like, all right, I'll put Detain second. But Bids follows it up right behind him. Bids is, first of all, he has the best PSN with Jar Jar Bids as a name. Great name, fantastic name. And secondly, his gameplay kind of reminds me a bit of Frosty from the Mutineers, where he plays this kind of role of just like a Slayer who's often on rotations and isn't always the first guy in, but will be if if the spawn dictates it. But the clip I'm going to show you right now is him getting about 8 in a row on Azir Cave, and it's an interesting clip because his team has spawns for P2, and they're stuck and spawn trapped there, and the other team is pushing on to P1 or to P2 and trying to consider going over to soccer field. And because of Bids' position, he's already pushed up mid map. Instead of falling back to his team and trying to secure P2, he would just get stuck in that spawn trap. He would just join them in the spawn trap and spawn up again on P2 and have to rotate over the soccer field. So instead of doing that, he plays his life and tries to get as many kills as he can mid-map, and then flanks behind for soccer field. It's like a really good example of like a really good life for someone on the hardpoint, and it was a nasty play from Bids. And I think it's worth noting, it's not like he's not snapping onto people like crazy. He does a couple snaps, but it's more just like kind of the idea of what he was doing and the importance of playing his life. He knew he had to stay alive, make a play there, and it was quite nice to watch. So I'm gonna play that right now.
Tried their best to hold.
Singularity in a big position for them. Like I said, they've been pretty much counting on this rotation all throughout P1. They weren't interested to try to hop in the hill as often as they could. They wanted to try to value the time. Here at this money hill, Bids in the midst of trying to actually mantle onto the wall, somehow manages to hit the shots, and that's got to be in some ways frustrating for the Academy roster as they're getting shut down consistently, already thinking about that soccer field as we're seeing 5 in a row, make it 6 in a row for Bids, having a fantastic spree right now, constantly catching the enemy in the back lines, has some assistance there for what would have been the 7th. Bids having a fantastic performance. The smoke is out, the enemy is blind, and he happens to be on the flank. Another opportunity to cause some havoc. Gravity, I think, may have been spotted out. I thought he might have been looking toward Bids' direction. Nonetheless, Singularity with the advantage, but keep in mind, this flank could be huge. Journey spotted out. That's going to be the 7th in a row. Big plays coming through from Singularity Zone.
I love how patient he's playing this. Just one right behind him. Does he have an idea? Yes, he does. Make that 8 when not able.
Yeah, super heads up play to stay alive, get all those kills mid-map, and make a play out of it. I said it's just like Bids' play style is a lot like that. It's more methodical, a bit less of just like smashing your head against the hard points. Another one for Bids is an opening break. And I remember seeing this clip, and I was just like, it's a good way to set a tone for a game. It's just to come out of the gates and get like a nice 5 spree and just destroy your opponents. I'm going to show that clip now.
Their last loss, but we'll see.
That we will. We've seen how much damage Bids can do if you're just tuning in. Bids and Detain have been running the show for the side of Singularity. Lots of high-octane gameplay coming from them and their submachine guns. You're seeing some of it already as Bids opens up with a triple kill, looking for the 4th. He connects with all 4 players to open up hardpoint here, and this man is incredible.
We were talking about if they could stay hot. Well, Bid said, yes, we can, and just got that 4 in top. And looks like he's going to try and get some more. That's his 5th. Is he going to get the 6th?
I really wish he stepped onto the 6th there. That would have been sick. But yeah, great opening break from Bids. Kind of showing you a bit of his play style there. It's fast and aggressive. Also worth noting, on that play there, he was with Detain there. And they both ran into the top together. And they're going to play again next year together, right? So the Bids and Detain duo is definitely something to look forward to next year. I'm not entirely sure how the scouting series works with that, because they might get broken up. But in terms of like watching them play in Challengers, those two together is going to be a lot of fun to watch. What'd you make of Bids in the Grand Finals, Yas?
Yeah, very similar to your breakdown. Also, something I just remembered, on the right side, you'll see the roles that we have for each player.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them we were a bit unsure. Obviously, the sub versus flex seems a bit redundant. But some of the players, we were a bit unsure whether they were mainly a sub or mainly an AR/flex, because it was a bit difficult to tell. So if you guys are aware of what specific role they played or are going to play, please let us know in the comments below, and we'll try and change that. But again, yeah, regarding Bids, he's a guy that I found very impressive. He was a very different pace compared to a guy like Detain, whereas he was a bit more methodical, as I like to say. And I feel like a player like him will thrive in 4v4, where it suits a more methodical play style as opposed to just ramming your head over and over and over. And I feel like a player like him may not have the flashiest plays at times, although he definitely can pop off. He's a guy that's going to be able to make the plays that help you win the game. He's going to make those, he's going to slow down the game in order for his team to win. And Potsy also had a breakdown for him, which I'll read out for you. His analysis of this guy is, he said, when Nordic qualified for the relegation in World War II, players in the amateur scene were not taking Bids seriously. At that time, Bids was only just 18 and coming off his first CWL LAN. The perception of Bids has quickly changed as he rose from a top 32 placing in Champs 2018 to a top 12 placing at BF4 Champs, and then a dominant start to the MW season. Luke has been a standout on Singularity Squad that has earned 2 first-place LAN finishes, 2 second-place LAN finishes, and 2 first-place finishes in a major online tournament, and multiple other high placings. Bids is an active communicator and a leader, which allows him to bring his winning ways to new teams. He has smooth movement and impressive centering, but still provides a patient gameplay style for SMG player. And I think the most important part to take away from what Potsy's analysis was is that he's an active communicator and a leader, and I feel like those are intangibles that will help him get to that next step of playing in the CDL. Because if you're gonna build an organization or build a team around some player, you want players to have those type of qualities, and thus I think Singular have done a good job of building their team around Bids.
Yeah, for sure. And also, if you ever want to catch his leading or his skill or whatever you want to watch, his stream is popping. Like it's a fun stream to watch. He's got a pretty good loyal viewers, and he also is very interactive with the chat. So he's a good streamer. So if you ever want to watch an amateur player from the EU stream, Bids is not a bad option. So next up, we've got Nasty. I guess Nasty's Nasty, best way to say it. But obviously, Nasty was rumored to be replacing Rated on the Royal Ravens. That was the intention, but he got locked out due to visa issues and the whole pandemic and everything. So unfortunately, he could never make it. And then they ended up using Shawnee, who they stuck with. So Nasty doesn't get the spot. So naturally, he was good to be the next up. So we had to put him on the list to start with. But then also his gameplay speaks for itself. He's very good. And with both guns, AR or sub, he did fine with both. Unfortunately for me, didn't get to see a lot of his gameplay from the Challengers Cups because for some reason they couldn't figure out how to make it in those brackets because they got like top 16, top 32, and top 5th in 3 of those Challengers Cups, which means they weren't on stream for those matches, which kind of sucks. But then in the interim of those matches, they won like 2 or 3 opening or home weekends, and obviously those are streamed, and I don't always get to catch those. We can't watch them back, but Nasty's definitely good. And it wasn't just like a desperate attempt to get somebody for Rated. Like they definitely knew who they wanted, and Nasty was a perfect kind of guy. Because it's the same thing I said with Afro. Maybe at the time, if Afro had been 18 earlier and had shown it earlier, they would have gone for Afro. But Nasty was a good guy to put in because he was a flex. And like I said before, flexes are very valuable to a team, especially like London, where they had a lot of role issues because of Rated and Wuskins together. To bring a guy like Nasty in would have been great because he could have slowed it down. Also put an AR out when they needed to, when it switched to a 2 AR meta. And if you want to talk about a 1-for-1 switch last year, if you had brought in Nasty for Shawnee, you would have gotten the flex player you wanted that Shawnee brought, but also you would have gotten a little bit. I mean, Shawnee played fine, but would have been more consistent gameplay in response out of Nasty. So it's unfortunate he couldn't come over. But we do have some clips from his Twitter we're going to show off. The first one is an S&D. It's a nice little clip here for Nasty.
Time's up. Get moving. You have the bomb. Let's go.
Yep, nice clip, clutching up. Is that around 11? I think it might have been around 11. No, this is around 10. But hey, nice clutch to win the map from Nasty there. Snaps on the guy on the stairs. That was disgusting. Then another clip of him on a 0K with an AR. So we saw it with the sub. Now let's see what the AR.
We're in the lead. Get ready to move. Specialist achieved. Control the hard point. The hard point is ours.
Yeah, quite a nasty clip from Nasty there. I love how he's in the same position. They try nading him, they try smoking him. They tried pre-firing and jumping at him. It just doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that he gets all of them there. So nice clip from Nasty, just showing you his aim. So, clearly can do it with both guns. And I don't know what his plans are, what his team looks like for next year. But if he can find a pretty good, geez, I'm blanking on the name. If he can find a pretty good amateur team to roll with next year, I'll definitely look out for Nasty, especially in the scouting series. I feel like in that kind of a setting, again, with him being a flex, I feel like he could really flourish in those kind of pickup teams. So we'll see that if he's able to really show off in the scouting series. But next we got Insight. So for Insight, actually, before we get into the breakdown, yes, but what do you think of Insight from watching the grand finals?
He was a very intriguing player. It was my first experience getting to watch him play since he got picked up as a sub from the Toronto Ultra. I was a bit I wasn't sure what to expect with his gameplay. Obviously, I'd heard he was one of the top ARs this year in the EU scene, and his gameplay definitely reflected that. He reminded me of like your prototypical AR. There were maps where he had a lot of low engagements. He was constantly going positive, so there's that at least that he was able to still slay out even if his SMGs weren't doing well. I particularly remember in one of their DOM matches, Detain and Chain weren't having exactly the greatest games, but you still saw Insight pushing up the map, using his great positioning and able to laser people on Team War during that Dom match specifically. He's definitely a guy that I'm not sure because I haven't been able to listen to their comms or had the chance to look at if he's an in-game leader or not, because if he does in-game lead, I think that that would be another specific reason why the Ultra would pick him up, because I think he's extremely talented in that main AR role. We put him here obviously because he's a sub for the Toronto Ultra. Whether he'll usurp Methods in that role will be very interesting to see, because Methods has been the poster boy of the Toronto Ultra for the past year. But there's got to be a reason they picked up this guy, and I mean it's clear that he's definitely super talented. And it'll be interesting to see how he'll play in 4v4, because I feel like that'll suit his playstyle more, where he's able to, be that turret that roams around the map, that can occasionally get aggressive when need be. But I really like the way Insight played for sure.
So what's interesting about what you said about Insight, which is all like true, by the way, I agree with a lot of that. What's interesting about it though is beginning of the year, Maple was actually the AR for Singularity, and Insight ran Flex. And I'm gonna show a clip pretty soon of Insight with a submachine gun. But before I show that clip, I just want to say, like, it is worth noting that he did flex at the beginning of the year because, again, like on Toronto, if Bance isn't performing well enough in respawn, which was an issue earlier in the year for Toronto last year, if Bance is a liability, Insight would be a good replacement for him, because if it is 3 subs, I'll show you a clip. He can definitely play with the sub. He's no slouch at the sub. And also, if it ends up being a 2AR meta, then it's perfect. Then you already have your guy. So if it ends up being 2AR, you have your guy, and then if Bance isn't doing it, I think Insight can slide right in. And obviously Bance does call, does IGL, and so if Insight is a good leader, I think he'll fit perfectly with the team. So let me show you that clip of Insight going off with the submachine gun.
A double, so the scrap time will go the way of the plugs, but because 2 members hit that hill late, that's going to give an opportunity for Singularity to zone out the map and get themselves established in this 5th hardpoint. Insight's going to have a massive role to play here as he gets the trophy down. He's able to find himself 2 kills initially, but he's got more coming from the back door. Fortunately, though, everybody else in green is here to help support now that they've gotten off their spots.
Oh yeah, pretty unfortunate and unlucky there for Maple. There was a 4-man mission amongst the top side of the map, and Insight is doing his best to hold him back. A little bit of pre-fires, unable to connect, but still, ring around to Rosie. He's going to stay safe for now. Reload, make sure his gun is ready for this next fight, and now we're just waiting for the plugs to make the play that they want to do. The first one was not a success, but the second, they definitely have numbers, and once again, Maple holding it down at a 1v3, still able to stay alive as Insight.
It's decision time, Belly. No one can win on this hill, but how much scrap time do you want?
Yeah, so he does some nasty stuff there. Those 2 kills long range, lying down prone with the MP5 are pretty nice as well. Brings it back into the map, and I believe they won that map in the end. So nice clip from Insight showing you can do it with the SMG, even from long range. So yeah, either way, whatever he wants to run next year, I am excited to see him play, hopefully. I mean, I don't want to curse Toronto, but I do hope that Insight gets some playing time. I kind of hope it doesn't turn into another Phantom situation where we don't see him play. But with that out of the way, we're going to go on to Denza. I don't have a clip of Denza, unfortunately, but Denza was someone that I actually initially overlooked because his role is very fast and aggressive SMGs, And I feel like with Detain and Bids, and Depa, who we're going to get to in a bit, even Shane at times, I feel like sometimes in Vortex, of course, on Team War, sometimes I overlook Denza, but Yas actually noticed that Denza was playing really well, and that was his big takeaway. So why don't you talk about Denza, Yas?
Yeah, when I watched back the Challengers finals, Denza was a player for me that, although maybe his stats weren't the greatest, the way he was playing was something to take note. I really liked the way that he did it really with both the SMG and M4. He was able to get aggressive, particularly on Hackney Yard. I remember him on the I'm blanking on what it used to be called, that L, that top L that you run up the stairs to, through that window. I don't know if like near P1. But he usually played around that area, was constantly, putting aggression on the other team. He definitely was aggressive when need to be, and his engagements reflected that. There were hard points where he was, top his teams in terms of engagement, and he played a key role alongside guys like Vortex. Those two in particular were able to, open up the map for, Harry and Dave to, look at and position with their many Rs. And I really like the way he was playing. I'm super glad that he and Detain are teaming up this year on Singularity, because I think they're going to be one of the most like filthy, disgusting like duos together if they play at that same pace that they did in Modern Warfare. So he's just a standout player in terms of engagement, in terms of the pace he was playing at. He's playing like methodically as well. He wasn't just like butting mashing, running at people. It seemed like he also, there was thought behind it. There was strategic play behind it. And I mean, War in general, we are a very like fundamental team that seem to know what they're doing. They weren't just trying to outslay people. Their positioning was always, on point, and Denzel was definitely a big part of that. Although he didn't have the greatest second series, the first series he definitely shined a bit more. He's a guy that I definitely look out for 100%. That I think was a bit slept on, but I think this year, I mean, I say this year. Last year he won basically everything you can win on Team War, and I think this year will just be another year to prove himself to the teams that overlook him.
Another reason why I did overlook him initially too was because at the beginning of, I think it was World War II, when he was kind of making his rise in the scene, maybe even dating back to Infinite Warfare, he teamed a lot with other Belgian players and like other players from different nationalities, and didn't really go over to the UK scene right away. And then when he finally did, he played with Tommy, and I think it was Tommy, Chain, and Maple on Vitality, and they placed like top 12 at World War II champs, and they shocked a lot of people. And he also got overlooked on that team because of how well Chain played in that tournament. So, like me personally, I did sleep on him there as well, and I didn't really have that much stock in him again because he'd already been around for a bit, playing with those other Europeans and other Belgian players. So when I looked at guys like Afro and Detaining, some of like the younger players, I kind of didn't look at Denza enough, which is a fault of my own. But yeah, Yas is right. Like he looked really good. He was super aggressive. And he was a great compliment to Vortex last year, and I am excited to see him play next year with the new team. So we'll see how they do. So moving on from Denza. Oh, actually, I should mention we put sub flex there for Denza because there were times where he did pull out the AR, but personally, I don't think he'll do that next year. So I'm leaning towards sub for him. Again, like if you guys know what roles they're going to play next year and are more confident in that, let us know what roles they're going to play, because it was hard to tell last year with like the multiple AR meta on different maps, and it got kind of mushy with 5v5. So yeah, if you guys are confident that you know the roles, let us know what they are. But then for Depa on BDS, he's definitely a sub player. High engagement, very fast. I think so you mentioned he was like what, Dylan to you?
I meant Detain was Dylan, but Depa,
Oh, yeah.
he definitely, noted like with how aggressive he was, and the casters call it all the time. I remember Hold Chef kept talking about looking out for Depa, which was very intriguing considering his teammate who makes their honorable mentions list, Zach, was the one putting up a lot of flashy stats. But yeah, you continue your analysis on Depa.
Yeah, so coming into this year, there was a couple of players to look out for from the French scene, having just turned 18. So there was, I don't know what happened to Cobra. If anyone knows what happened to Cobra, let me know, because I have no idea what happened to him. But there was like Cobra, Hydra, and Zach. Those three were the ones I heard the most about. And Zach played, by the way, he played great. He doesn't make the list because, we have 10 spots here. It's tough. Doesn't make the list, but he is very, very good. And so he did very well. Hydra, of course. I mean, he had a great year. Got picked up by New York, so he's already made it. And so, but then for Depa, he got like I didn't hear that much hype about him surrounding him. And I think it was maybe the second or the third Challengers Cup, I started noticing more of his play. And the first thing that caught my eye was his S&D play was phenomenal. So many clutches, like constantly clutching out 1v3s, 1v2s, just making really smart plays in S&D. And it's hard to analyze his hardpoint play because, like Yas mentioned, you got Zach dropping bombs every time, and also the playing. When we catch them playing, we often catch them playing against Team War or Singularity and the harder teams where being an entry and being a faster guess as sub is a lot harder against like those kind of teams. So it was hard to note how well Depa and how good Depa is against that competition in respawns specifically. He was still keeping up, by the way. Like, he wasn't a slouch. It was just harder for him to pop off and do like exceedingly well in that role. But then in Search is where you can really see his skill. And I do have a nice clip for Depa in Search.
First, and Zach blind fires, takes down another. Great damage here done off the rip. It looks as if he's going to have to challenge again. Taking down players, dropping like flies. Depa, no answer in that particular gunfight.
It's a 3v2 and Bomb remains down. 26 seconds to play over. And Brain gets 2 to close things out. Depa last alive. How are you going to respond? What comes through? Green gets the second one on the bomb. One more left alive. He gets all 3. Are you kidding me, BDS? How in the hell did they win that round?
Yeah, I love that ego challenge out of Depa. He knows he's going to fall off the crate, so he just jumps out the window and gets the kill at the end there that he definitely should not have gotten. Nice, nasty 1v3 from Depa. But the reason why I want to note that out is because it's not just the only time I saw that. Like, I saw that all year out of him. And I remember I think I asked in one of the Reddit posts about Depa because, I hadn't seen that much about him. And somebody mentioned that he is someone to look out for and it is very exciting that he's playing so well. So next year, Zach and Depa, I imagine will play together. Personally, I hope they go for Brezzy and Whalers to kind of round out a nice little 4 French player team there. But we'll see. But yeah, definitely keep an eye out for Depa, especially in Search. And that takes us to Chain. And for Chain on the list, he's a bit lower here than maybe people expected, especially considering there was a time when there was a rumor that he would join Optic at some point last year. Mostly because of his S&D play. Like, he's always been an S&D player. That's kind of how he came out in the scene. Was he was a S&D quote unquote kid back in like the World War II days before Time picked him up to play at Champs. So that's kind of where Chain rose out of. He streamed a lot of his Chals and 2v2s and 3v3s and whatnot, and really made a name for himself in Search. And then switching to Variant, he did fine. Like, he's not a slouch in Respawn at all. He definitely could learn the game and play well. Now, surrounding the roster changes and everything. So the initial rumor when he got dropped from Singularity the first time was that it was to do with like internet connection, but then people were wondering about toxicity with him, and then he falls out of Singularity, plays with the Connects for a bit, and doesn't really see that much success. And then Singularity ends up dropping Maple and picking him back up, and then they did better with Chain the second time around. But individually, Chain didn't. He kind of fell off, which is why he's a little bit low on the list towards the end of the year. He didn't seem as consistent. They didn't seem to have the same kind of Singularity mojo they had at the beginning of the year. I'm not sure if that's because of Maple leaving and they had tough time kind of designing roles for each other, and maybe the S&D play kind of fell apart. I don't know what it was specifically, but I did notice Chain wasn't quite as consistent in the latter half of the year. So what did you make of Chain, Yas?
Yeah, so for Chain, I didn't have a lot of gameplay to watch of him, or didn't have a lot of opportunity to watch of him besides the Challenger Finals, and he didn't have the greatest Challenger Finals, so it's not fair for me to base all of my thoughts and opinions on him as a player based on one online match that he had. But with that being said, the things that I noticed in the finals that were positives, which are the talent that people see in him, is again being part of that SMG duo alongside Detain that constantly put pressure, that played methodical to get the respawn or get spawns rather for a game that really was kind of chaotic in terms of spawns. You saw Chain playing properly. He didn't look like he was kill whoring from my perspective. but there isn't so much I can say for him because there wasn't a lot of him in terms of in the kill feed, considering that he was having a poor series. But the talent is definitely there. I don't know what Challengers team he's going to play on this year, but if you want to keep out for, obviously you mentioned teams have inquired about him in the past, whether it be Optic because of his S&D play. Um, I did notice that in S&D, I think at least in the first S&D that they played, he had the most first bloods on his team or of anyone in the match at that point. So put him in the right position. He will make plays. He's a playmaker for sure, and I think that's one of the reasons why he's so attractive as a player to these organizations.
Yeah, and then looking at the chart really quickly, you're gonna notice that Gizmo wasn't there. I mean, it's gonna get called out, right? Because you got 4 Singularity guys and 1 guy's missing. And the reason why Gizmo doesn't make the list for me is he's a good player. Like I'm not trying to leave him off the list to say he's like shit or whatever. He's a very good player.
Oh, sorry, not to cut you off, but
sorry.
What I realize is that people that don't make our list, we're not saying are bad. They just aren't the top players that we expect. Like they're going to be top players. There's definitely players that aren't on our list that could easily make the league and make us look like fools. Like that is 1,000%.
Oh yeah,
going to be the case. Like don't get us wrong. This is just from the limited video that we've seen. This is who we really like. Now there could be players that we overlooked for sure, and Gizmo could be one of those players. But currently, that's why he's not on our list. He's a part of our honorable mentions, but just to give more insight, no pun intended, on our picks.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, these are just people that we think are looked good from the gameplay that we have. So yeah, that's good to mention. So then next up we got Harry. So his PSN is Lucifer, which I think is so much better than Harry. I really hope he switches to Lucifer because that's just way better. But regardless, very consistent player all year for Team War. He wasn't super flashy. He definitely had his moments where he would, pop off and get a nice spree. But on a team like Team War, when you got guys like Afro and Dave, Vortex, Denzel, like everyone's so good, it's really hard to stand out. So it's really hard to say how good Harry is. What I do remember about Harry, which I'm sure some of you also remember, was Black Ops 4 Champs when he absolutely smoked Nagafin to upset them in that game. And then I think he was in Control 3-0 on Genji. I believe it was a 3. I forget what the game mode it was, but he was in showers. Nagafin gets the first 2 bolts on him, and then Harry just boom, smokes him, snaps him. Disgusting. That's the first time I really thought, like, this Harry guy's nasty. I was very excited that he got picked up by Team War this year because I wanted to see more out of him. And we did, and they did great. But like I said before, such a stacked roster, hard to know how good he could be. But he's the guy to look out for sure, because I think regardless of what Academy team, or not Academy team, AM team he ends up on, he'll play well. Which leaves us with... Actually, before I go to Maple, Yas, did you notice anything about Harry from the finals?
He's just extremely dependable. Like,
okay,
he didn't. Just looking back through his stats, I don't think he had. Let me just look back through this quickly because I took down their stats from their game. But yeah, dependable was one of the words that first came to mind. I think he had maybe 1 map from the entire. Yeah, okay, 2 maps from the entire grand finals that he went negative on. The rest he was positive, and by quite a margin. He was extremely dependable. And one of those maps they went negative on, I think it was just an S&D. He went 7-9. Like, it wasn't like he played bad. Like, he was extremely dependable player for Team War, and that kind of consistency at the highest level in the amateur scene is something that you should value and 100% should covet. And it's one of the reasons it was kind of annoying to always have to go back between, okay, his name's Lucifer, but I'm calling him Harry through all my stats. So hopefully he sticks to one. But, I really like the way he was playing. He was dependable, especially with the M4, which he mainly used through the grand finals from what I could tell. He was constantly putting himself in the right position alongside guys like Dave. But yeah, dependable is the name, the thought that comes to mind. And he's definitely a player that, he's a steady presence, and that I think every team could use a guy like him.
Yeah, it's good. And then next up we got Maple. So Maple, it's weird to say this because he's so far down on the list, but Maple's probably my favorite player out of all 10 of them. Like, it's hard to pick favorites sometimes, but Maple's like, he's just such a personality, and he's also very talented. And I love the story. I don't know how true it is with that Tommy told when at Champs in War 2, when he said he met him at the supermarket. Like, he probably already knew about Maple before that, but either way, it's pretty funny. And he is, extremely talented. He's got the nose ring, so he's got a bit of silly in him, which is always good. But he got dropped from Singularity this year after they dropped Chain. They had some issues still with roles because Maple was an AR, but Insight wanted to main AR, so they Maple flexed. And I think after they picked up Gizmo, it just kind of fell apart role wise. And not saying Gizmo's bad, just kind of the way it is sometimes when you make a change. And I think they felt another change was necessary, so they dropped Maple and picked Chain back up. And I was very sad because Maple couldn't find a team to play with. I shouldn't say that. He played on Hyper Beams. They had a good team, like they weren't nobodies, but he couldn't find like a top echelon team to play with at the end of Challengers. So unfortunately, he couldn't make it on the final stream. But very good player. He can flex. He can run a sub if he has to. But I really want to see him run an AR, and I think he will, considering he's hitting with Bids, Detain, and Denza next year. He's got to be the AR for that team. So I'm happy that he's going to be back in that role. And I think, like, on that team, I think he might look really, really, really good because he has really good sub help. And that's going to put him in the position to play well. And I think, definitely look out for Maple next year. If Tommy vouches for him, then I trust that. Why not? Tommy's the GOAT in terms of bringing up young talent in the EU scene. So, excited for Maple. And that kind of rounds out a nice little top 10 for us. Again, like Yas just mentioned, like it's really tough to make these lists because there's a lot of guys that we're going to put in our honorable mentions later who just like are on the cusp. But these 10 guys are our list. So with that, we're going to move on to our final section here, which we're going to kind of speed through because this podcast is already stretching 45 minutes. It was a good time, but time sensitive here. So the former pro list. So before people start freaking out and asking where Wuskins and Scraps are, we're just going to say these are guys that are likely to play in Challengers. I don't know. Like, we don't know what Wuskins and Scraps are going to do. I know Zed maybe hinted at it in a video, but that's not concrete. So I personally imagine Wuskins just becoming a full-time streamer and Scraps as well and doing Warzone, but I don't know what their motivations are. So if they play in Challengers, obviously, they're top two. And Jerd, the same thing. Like, Jerd is a guy who's been a pro like for forever, basically, and has been at the top for like forever. And it's kind of sad he's not on a team right now, but I don't know where his motivations are. I don't know if he'll fall back in the amateur scene or not. So with that being said, top of the list, Dave and Vortex. I mean, they had a phenomenal year. They both played lights out. Yas, why do you like? I don't know what to ask you here, but what are your thoughts on Dave and Vortex?
I really liked Vortex, especially in the second series of Grand Finals. He was making a lot of key plays for spawns, getting multiple pieces, playing his life. He did that multiple times, especially in domination. Remember when War was trying to keep the A flag? He was constantly running around, causing mayhem and playing his life in order to help secure that flag and then getting the kills. He had a massive jump. I think he had a roughly around a 0.94 in the first series and a jump to 1.01. And I feel like him playing at that level, although it's a small incremental change in terms of KD, his impact compared to players that Chain and Detain in that series was quite noticeable. So, good for him. He's a guy that, many have, said this is kind of like a renaissance year. He had a great year. I think Potsy also mentioned that he was a guy that, definitely had a comeback year this year. Dave, he's always been a guy that, everyone, I'm a big fan of Dave. I've always liked him since he first started playing with Epsilon as an SMG player. So to see him as an AR now is, a bit mind-boggling to me. Like, what a shift. But he looked very comfortable in that main AR role when I saw him, and as he has all year, the casters kept referring to him as the best AR in Challengers this year. Whether you agree with that or not is something else, but he definitely was one of the top ARs. One of the things that I noticed was his positioning was very, very strong. Obviously, because he used to play sub, he can get aggressive when he needs to be. But he was constantly playing for rotations, constantly putting himself in like really great positions when shooting at other people, and that's the sort of thing that you look for at the highest level. Is that especially in 4v4, is your positioning is key and as a main AR. And Dave was at the top of the line in my opinion. Also, he can snipe in S&D, and I feel like that's an underrated feature. He there was rounds he was getting multiple first bloods, opening up the map for Team War and S&D, and I think that's something that's underrated for sure. In terms of the stats that I think Nova Stats GG had on Blitz.gg, great website by the way. He was second in S&D KD ratio 1.34 for the year. For the stats that they had. And Respawn, he was also reliable. So yeah, overall, Dave and Vortex were great players. So there's nothing more that can be said about them.
Yeah, that takes us to Zed. And Zed I have on the list here because he basically on his video confirmed he will be playing in Challengers. So he's likely to play in Challengers. So he's high on the list. I kind of equate him a little bit to like a EU version of Havoc, where he's like a S&D specialist, and he's very, very good in search, but also plays a really fast role in hardpoints as well. I hope he can find a decent team to run with in Challengers. I do like him, like personality-wise, as a streamer. He's got a fun little personality to him, and I think he brings a lot to a team. So eventually, he can work his way back into the CDL for sure. He does all the dirty work for a team, and he is a very good player. I noticed somebody on Reddit came after Zed calling him like a baiter. I don't understand what that was all about because that's definitely not what I saw out of Zed. But yeah, with Zed out of the way, this brings us to Journey. Journey obviously played for the Atlanta FaZe Academy last year and was, I don't know if he's the most consistent player on that team the whole year, but he's very good the whole year round. And he is like extremely, extremely skilled. Like his raw skill, his gun skill is phenomenal. And he and Metals, actually, I'll put Metals in there too. Might as well talk about him as well. Those two guys have like really, really, really good gun skill. But unless if they expand and get like a Spanish team, I am worried about these guys. I don't know if they'll fall back into the CDL at any point. I kind of think without an expansion, with like an expected Spanish team, we might not see them in Pro League again, which is a little sad. Especially because there are some Spanish talent waiting up, turning 18. You got Rencor and you got Eric Boom. You guys are probably going to say who, but those guys are turning 18. And, Journey, Metals, Rencor, and Eric Boom, why not make a team out of that, So there is Spanish talent. I hope we get like a Madrid or Barcelona team because that'd be so much fun. But that's those two guys done. So the next three, so why don't you run us through those next three pretty quickly?
Yeah, so Metals, Brezzy, and Mad Cat are the next three you're referring to. But yeah, Metals, he played on the Ultra, who I followed very closely this year. He played the sub role, and he played very well. I liked him as a player. In fact, I was a bit upset when they took him out of the roster for, I believe, they made it's hard to keep track. They made so many different team changes over the course of the season. But I really liked Metals as a sub. He was great in Black Ops 4 for that, famous Babos Heretics team. Love those guys. And I liked him on the Ultra. I think when the meta shifted towards 2AR meta, it made more sense to have Bance as opposed to Metals in that case. But he's definitely a guy that I think should be kept on the CDL team's radar. I'd love to see him, play the full season out in a 4v4 setting again, to remind teams of what they're missing out on, because I think he's extremely talented. Moving on to Brezzy, obviously you can touch more on this, but incredibly talented player. I remember him in Black Ops 4 making crazy plays all the time. He was a guy that I think should have gotten a shot this year in Paris. I felt like it was a bit unfair to not give him his opportunity, especially considering that the storyline would have been incredible. For a French guy to play for his home team. So a bit unfortunate there. But what else do you have to say about Brezzy, Seth?
Yeah, Brezzy was so good at Black Ops 4 on that was it E6? Yeah, E6 team. He was probably the second best cluster player in the game behind Abizi. When I say he was good, he was really, really, really good and consistent as well. He was phenomenal. So yeah, I was upset he didn't get a chance to play in the Pro League, but he looked great all year this year again. Like, people talk about how good Hydra was, and for good reason. But Brezzy was right there with him. Like, he played alongside Hydra and looked really good with them. So, wait, he did, right? Yeah. Or am I blanking?
Yeah.
He did. Yeah, I know, I'm right. Yeah, he played really well alongside him. But that takes us to Mad Cat, and so let's talk about Mad Cat a little bit and the fact that he's flexing now.
Yeah, Mad Cat was a player that I really liked to watch this year. I've always liked him as a player in general when he played on Splice, both in IW and World War II. I really liked his play style. I like his personality. He's definitely a big personality guy. If anyone saw him on the Eavesdrop podcast with Nameless way back when, he's a very entertaining person. And as a player, he brings a lot to a team in terms of his veteran presence, his leadership. He's done it all. I mean, he's one of the few EU players that has actually won, a major event with all the teams being there, NA included. So I feel like that's intangibles that you can't overlook. And he definitely looked very strong with the M4, especially. I was watching Connect 5. I mean, he plays top 3 at the EU Challenger Champs. I watched his matches back, and they placed every team very closely. And I really liked the way he was playing, both mainly with the M4 is what I watched him, and that's sort of the player that I know him to be. And I think that if you're looking at a team to build around Mad Cat, you can't go wrong with him given what he can bring to a team in terms of all the intangibles as I mentioned. So I like Mad Cat personality as a player. I think he's definitely a guy that I would like if I'm an organization to pick up for sure.
Yeah, that leaves us with Whalers as the last one on the list. He was pretty good, consistent AR all year for Train Hard. Again, teamed with Hydra and Brezzy, and they looked phenomenal. It's like a 3 kind of thing. Also, Defrag on the team looked great. But Whalers has been around for quite a while now. I know when he first came into the scene, he was kind of like Hydra was, where he was like the young French superstar that Gotaga used to call out as being like the next up. And now Whalers is in the position where he is the veteran in the French scene right now. And I kind of look to him to keep bringing in French talent. And he and Dave, I kind of see as like the next kind of Tommies, for their respective scenes. So I don't think, unless it is like, actually, there already is a French team, so it's not going to happen. I don't think Will's ever get back into the Pro League, unfortunately, but his stream pops, gets like tons of viewers every time that he streams. Those Challenger events, he gets like a couple hundred in those streams. And yeah, like I said, if he can keep bringing up young French talent, it'll be fun to watch. And that's where I kind of see Whalers now, is like kind of the Tommy role, kind of the Dave role, just like the veteran in the scene now who's going to keep bringing up these young talents. So that rounds up our former pro list and rounds up the episode we have for you today. Again, if you have anybody that we think we overlooked, definitely let us know. I know there's a whole like cesspool of players out there. But yes, why don't you run through the honorable mentions to wrap up the episode?
Yeah, so we did have some honorable mentions that we were considering putting on this list, but at the end we stuck with the list that we had. Obviously, a guy like Gizmo, he played on Team Singularity, who rose to the ranks this year. He had quite the grand finals too, especially playing with that M4. Believe he recently turned 18, if I'm not mistaken. But he's definitely a guy that, I believe he recently turned 18. He's a guy that I really like the way he was playing. I think that he's going to be. Not recently turned 18, sorry. He is 18. He's going to turn 19 soon. But I like the way he played the M4. He's definitely an honorable mention for me. Addition, you look at guys like Zach, who's another strong SMG player, very flashy on that team BDS alongside Depa. I like the way they played. Zeke was a main AR that looked very strong throughout the entire season. You can't forget guys like Defrag and BPC Connor, Callum. But I could sit here for days and list off all the players that we really like. Those are the main honorable mentions that we want to mention. But again, there's a lot of talent, especially in the EU scene. I feel like the talent pool keeps getting wider and wider each year, which is awesome. But again, like Seth said, if there's anyone we missed or anything that you want to correct us on, please do so. We love the feedback. We got a lot of love on the last video. Also, if you made it this far in the video, don't feel afraid to subscribe. We're looking to hit 100 before the end of the year. It's a bit of an ambitious goal, but we want to keep pushing out content because we do love it and we love all the feedback we're getting. But with that being said, Seth, do you have anything else to say?
No, that's all. That wraps it up.
All right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Yep. See you.